The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the expressed written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
stationed atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized.
It's Wednesday, March 21st, Thursday, March 22nd, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. And this is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, sitting in the captain's chair, Dave Scott, live in the Great White North in the Caribou region on top of the melting snow of the mountains of central British Columbia at SOR HQ. We are 150,000 strong nightly on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Newnan, Georgia, on the United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live at spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, The Fringe FM, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to revolution.radio and donate today. We are all over social media. You can watch us live on periscope.tv. We're on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott SOR. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. We would appreciate the follow. We're on iHeartRadio in the USA. Talk, stream live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website, of course, is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. You can rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the paranormal strange news on the Encounter Online, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. The forests of the Pacific Northwest have a lot of strange going on. And no, it's not just the hippie culture planting some sort of lettuce in between the trees. No. From UFOs and ghostly hauntings, courtesy of the Gold Rush Trail, to the legends of Sasquatch and the little tribes that rule the forests. Yes, with its First Nations background, this area residing from British Columbia all the way down to the northern part of California has some interesting stories and tales indeed. Samantha Ellen Ritchie is one of Washington State's top researchers when it comes to studying elusive creatures. Her research started with Bigfoot, but has eventually morphed into much more than that. Portals, interdimensional beings, little people of the forest. How does it all tie into the paranormal? How does it tie into society today? Well, we're going to find out right now as we bring in Samantha Ellen Ritchie for the second time on Spaced Out Radio. So glad to have you back, my friend. How you been doing?
I've been doing pretty good. Just had a lot going on the past year, that's for sure.
I think we all have. There's not too many people that I can say are still looking fondly back at 2017.
No, there was some good things, and there definitely were some bad things. So I'm just and some health issues, but there's things that have been driving me pretty good as far as this sense of discovery. Every time I go out in the woods or the forest, there's always something new that seems to be cropping up that I'm discovering. And some phenomenal stuff, too. It's just, and probably half of it's over the top, to be honest with you.
I absolutely
don't even know where to begin.
I don't even know where to begin either. And, it's one of those topics where we're literally going to do a free-for-all tonight. We have no script plan. We're just absolutely going for it. And I think it's important, Samantha, to start off and let the public know a little bit about you, how you got into this field of research.
Oh, that's... I'll try to give I've given this several times to different shows, but I will give kind of a fresh outlook on this. I've always had a closeness to nature. As far as I'm from, I'm actually raised from the East Coast over in Kentucky, and we had a section of woods behind our house over there, and I used to go out there and after school. I wasn't I was just very interested in trying to help clean up the forest, and I would do things like this and rake trails. I'd put little signs up and things like that for walking trail. I was really into the woods, really into the nature. And that desire kind of, something drew me out. I'd been back and forth to Washington State. Initially, I came here because at the time I was about 19 and my mom remarried, and so she married someone who was in the Army and got stationed up here at Fort Lewis. So I kind of followed up here for a little bit, but I didn't stay very long with them until I found some other friends I could stay with. So that began my love affair with the state and the beautiful mountains and Mount Rainier, which is, you never get tired of looking at that when you wake up in the morning. Get up and say, that's like the eighth wonder of the world, as far as I'm concerned, because you don't see anything like that in the rest of the United States, usually. But fast forward an entire lifetime, it seems, of being single, then getting married, having kids, 3 kids, getting divorced, getting married again, moving back and forth to the East Coast and back to Washington 4 separate times. Finally, moving back here the final time in 2002, and my kids were already teenagers and, getting practically grown up. And that was my final time, because every time I would go back east, and there was something that was just beckoning me to come back to the Washington State. So we got here, and like I said, up to this point, I didn't have any kind of contact. It's not one of these things where I had an early experience with Sasquatch or anything like that, but it was something that kind of was drawing me up here. And then I went through some trials and situations. I will say I did have one situation. I almost died when I was 13, so I had a near-death experience. And that might have triggered some things on a psychic level, because I had some psychic experiences that kind of go along with what's going on with this. And so I had some trials and situations the latter part of the last decade. About 2007, I discovered my spouse of 17 years had terminal cancer. So that was probably hell on earth for the next 3 years, trying to keep the insurance going and pay for the chemo and radiation and different treatments, and so Toby finally died September of 2010. I was pretty much devastated. And so it was important for me to kind of keep my sanity a little bit. And the kids had already gone out on their own. I was by myself. So I would get in my car and drive out. And I had already done this when Toby was sick and somewhere else for getting treatments. But I would go back and forth twice a week. I discovered going out toward the Cascades in a little place called Greenwater. It had a quaint little village, with the tavern and a few other, and then, gift shops and things like that. And I found it very soothing for me to go out there. And it had a couple of rivers, and it was nestled in a little valley there. And so I kept doing that for several years. And then finally I had an opportunity in 2012. Someone had an RV for sale outside the local tavern. And went ahead and purchased it and found a rental spot that I could put it on, and I had my opportunity to stay there more often. So starting in 2012 is when I had my first contact with a individual named Barb Shoup, who worked at the general store there. And my first impression, which is pretty strong, walked in, looked down into the glass case, and saw these gigantic plaster footprints. And I said, what in the world we got going on here? And then she proceeded to tell me these are actually replica castings of the Bigfoots that were taken in a certain area. And I said, really? Yes. She asked, do you believe in Bigfoot? And I said, well, I don't have any reason to. I'm pretty open-minded about this, but I've never had an encounter. The only thing I remember was, and I was believing mainstream media at the time back in the 70s, that it was hoax and these footprints were being hoaxed. And I kind of believed all the lies, I guess, at the time. And I even liked Harry and the Hendersons. That was a pretty good movie, I mean, it was pretty impressive, but I still figured it was just all myth. I mean, at that point, along with everything else. And but then it didn't take long before, while I was in my RV and right next to the woods, where I started hearing these howls. I would hear these calls, and they weren't anything like a bird or an animal that you would ever hear. You'd actually hear the whooping sounds, like you hear. That's what they do. I'd hear them across the river, and hear them nearby, and they'd go from tree to tree, and then finally I had a walk behind a set of these bunkhouses into a really dark section of forest because I heard something that sounded like a barred owl. I shined my light up in the tree, and then all of a sudden it sounded like about 5 different monkey chatter creatures jumping all over the place and going from tree to tree, and they just kind of moved across the top of the trees all the way across the edge of the parking area around where the RV park was. And so 2 other people got interested in kind of chasing it around. They had a flashlight too, and all 3 of us kind of chased it back behind the bunkhouses again, and it's pinned to centered up in one tree, and I said, quick, shine the light up there. When I did, I got my first glimpse of something just like a ball of black-gray lunging itself, propelling itself from one tree to the next, and a good 20, 25 feet different in between the 2 tree trunks. It was like being propelled, holding on with their hands and lunging with their feet, pushing with their feet, and just going horizontal, flying across from one tree to the next. So that was my first encounter of actually seeing something like that. And then it wasn't long after that, I had purchased property across the way and moved my RV over there and had a little cabin. And I just put a fire pit in. And I was just tending to a fire. and had to go back in the RV for a couple of minutes. And as I walked back out, the next thing I know, I catch sight of something kind of running away from my fire, going into the woods that was right next to the lot, and it was just making a horrendous screaming sound, like it was like nothing I've ever heard before. And so I figured it was a young one. So one thing led to another, and I just continued to have these experiences. And then finally, in my association with Barb and her group of people that were doing campouts, we finally started witnessing what I consider the most horrendous thing we ever saw in her life, was her videotaping what we call the cloaking Bigfoot. This is where it looked like Predator jumping down from a branch, and it was translucent and had that same sci-fi effect to it. And it's been on the net. It's been on the internet and YouTube quite a bit, and very well known at this point. And my experiences at that point, that same little area was also the same spot when I went back to it. The very day. Now I remember these dates clearly. This was the cloaker. We call it the cloaker, or the cloaking Bigfoot. Was September 11th of 2014. Not that it was easy to remember because it was September 11th, but I've been documenting all these dates. And I was so impressed with this because she discovered this on the video and was just taken aback by it, because she was expecting a physical creature. The Bigfoots were just a physical creature, and it kind of rocked her world when that happened. So when I decided the very next day that I would go up the trail in that same area, but I didn't want to have all the other people. We had about 7 people with us from the camp group. And I had it in my head that I wanted to go up there and have an experience. I heard it said by someone that leave your recording equipment back. Don't take it with you. I didn't bring an audio recorder with me. I didn't bring my camera or my cell phone. I guess what I was having the intention was that if there was a Bigfoot up there, I was anticipating being able to have a Bigfoot walk up to me and shake my hand or something like that, and I would have been blown away. And that would have been the most awesome experience. And even if I hadn't recorded it, it would still been the most awesome thing I've ever seen. Well, it didn't work out the way expected exactly, but I came away with an experience up there that was probably just as awesome or even more awesome. And that was when the wind was whipping up in that one little field area that I walked in that was only 100 feet away from where the one was that was cloaked. Then I turned around, and as I was walking back on the trail, and noticed that light portal, just beams of light suspended up in the air. And I think I had talked about this before on different shows and things, and it just very, very unique configuration. They were like in the shape of a Z, and there were 4 of them. So imagine 4 very brilliant orange-red glowing Z lights, and 4 of them forming a rectangular box up about 3 feet above the ground, and just and staying stationary too. So as I walked past it, it didn't change its static nature. In other words, I could actually walk around it and actually see the beams as if they were suspended, like something was holding it there. I couldn't keep my eye off of it. It was just the most, and I wasn't fearful because I had this euphoric feeling going on right before that happened. And I was just going, well, this is something. You don't see this every day. And I was just kind of smiling about it, but I didn't want to get any closer to it because I didn't know what would happen. It's very foolhardy to approach something that is something like that. You don't know if you're going to be propelled into another dimension, or you don't know what's going to happen. So I wasn't going to take any chance. If I don't understand, I'm going to just kind of keep my distance from it. But I was as close as 15 feet away from it as I was going around it. So I stared at that thing, and I didn't really want to take my eyes away. But I did turn away for 1 second, it seemed like. And as I turned my attention back around and looked, there, of all things, was a orb. Now, keep in mind, this is in the middle of the daytime. Here is a beach ball-sized orb. Very translucent. Looks like a big soap bubble with electrical energy going around it. It's also kind of orange in color. And it's floating along, it's floating around. It's just floating above the ground. And it heads toward that Z structure. It goes towards the end of it, and then goes directly inside and positions itself dead center in between the where the Z parts came out. And as it does that, the next thing that happens, the thing just kind of, it pulses, and then disappears. This all took place in about a 60-second period of time. I'm standing there watching this thing slowly disappear. And I'm blown away. I mean, that right there just, it changed my whole life, because at that point, I just felt that I'd been betrayed. I guess the feeling was I felt betrayed. I felt betrayed all my life by people telling me that stuff like that doesn't exist. So if that exists, if something like that exists, then everything else that they must say must be a lie. Whether it's about Bigfoot, little people, the little people came in the other picture. And we're going to be talking about that. But that started my path. That changed me probably, that probably aided me on a spiritual path more than anything else. And I'll kind of get into that.
When you started looking into this creature and you started looking at it from a very unpopular perspective, did you feel that you were on the outside looking in towards this field? Because let's face it, there are so many people who absolutely refuse to talk anything about these creatures in a spiritual or interdimensional type ability. Yet you started off that way with your own experiences. How have you been able to continue on without getting, ridiculed about that, Samantha?
Who said I hadn't been ridiculed? I mean, no, seriously, I have gotten my share of beatings, I suppose, in that area. I think part of it is you find it on YouTube a little bit. And matter of fact, when I started my own YouTube channel, just to start, and it came in handy because I was documenting my stuff back in 2014, Planet Sasquatch. And my very first video was and I used the wrong word because I knew, people, when they say Photoshop, everybody was talking about how, the biggest thing was hoaxing. Everything's being hoaxed. And the very first video I had was how to use Photoshop to enhance finding Bigfoot. Boy, did I get crucified for that one. And even on the Facebook groups, there's been a number of different Facebook groups, and it seemed like they were just filled with some pretty hateful people. I mean, they didn't appreciate newcomers coming along with a different idea. And so I come along and said a few things, and I felt like I was fighting for my life half the time, just making a comment or something or posting anything. So I can see in the past, I can see how people who have had experiences, like encounters with Bigfoot and different things like that, or let's just say UFOs or whatever it is. That's not the norm. People are scared to death. They don't want to rock the boat. A lot of them just would rather not deal with the ridicule and not say anything. Or they'll cave in, if something like that does happen, they stop doing it. But me, I guess I'm not like that at all. I don't really care.
I love
Matter of fact, I don't really give a rat's. I'm not going to finish the sentence because you know what I'm going to say.
Absolutely.
Because because that makes the difference. You know, with me, I don't want to cave to the truth. You know, the truth is the truth. And when I discover truth, and I don't want to participate in the lie. And the lie is people saying these things don't exist and a whole lot of other things. So I pressed on. I mean, in my case, sure, I had I tempered some of myself. I didn't try to post things that would cause undue ridicule for no reason. So I tried to be very, very objective in the material that I posted. If I did come across something like a picture of what I thought was a Bigfoot or something, I tried to do comparison photos to show it was an static object, like, oh, I guess it was a tree trunk after all that was standing there and not a Sasquatch. So, and also, my research is extended in things for instance, color analysis differences between. When I look at my photos, I try to explain, I try to teach people, so these are the kind of characteristics you need to look for, so that you're not looking at a picture like some people do, and then all of a sudden they do 100 circles on this picture, say, look, there's a Bigfoot, there's a Bigfoot in every leaf, or there's Elvis in my coffee cup. You see what I'm saying? I don't want to go down that road, because that's the kind of thing that people get the impression of, you know, and when you're not being methodical, you know.
You say you've taken some ridicule, but why do you think then that so many researchers out there are afraid to go down that road? Is it because, as you briefly mentioned, that they don't want to put their name on the line with that? Or do you think that they just, you know, well, let's use the term that everybody uses, is the woo-woo factor. Okay. You know, they think it's a little bit woo-woo to go down that road because in scientific terms, which they like to hide behind, the woo-woo factor doesn't exist.
Right. And, well, it's one thing if a person, like I can't possibly imagine someone who hasn't had a woo experience or paranormal experience and then decides, you know, oh, I think this is an interesting subject. I think I'm going to be a paranormal researcher, or I'm going to be a researcher into cloaking Bigfoots. You know, it doesn't happen that way, because you don't have the motivation to do that until you actually had your own personal experience, and you're actually going down a rabbit hole at that point. And that's really what the impetus is for a lot of people like myself. Is we do start going down a rabbit hole of discovery. And now, you were talking about people that hesitate to go the distance and don't do it. And there could be reasons. They could be at a job. It could be a job situation where they're in a very public relation oriented type of business, and this perception is everything. And if you go and all of a sudden you're a credible person, and the next thing you know says, you know, I saw an alien, or I saw a Bigfoot, or I saw this, or I saw that, and that gets out publicly. You could see that could damage the business. It could actually get them fired. You know, or it cause a downturn in business and everything. I know I probably have experienced a little bit of even myself being downplayed just a tad, you know, due to the fact that I pursued down this course. But I haven't been adversely affected by it, you know. As I've been pretty independent, been pretty self-employed and all that, and and the kind of work I do doesn't impact people's perception of me, what I pursue. So it does make a difference a little bit. You
mentioned about the cloaking creature. And when I had my experience, I saw 2 of them, and then 5 days later I saw some sort of cloaking as well. And it was about 10 o'clock at night, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, so it was darker out, and it was more like a pixelation, you know, when they pixelate someone's face on television. Is that what you saw?
Yes. Well, here's the thing. What I saw with my eyes, I didn't see anything. It's what we saw in the resulting video. So the resulting video is the only thing we really saw. Even Barb and the others, they saw different things. They saw a black thing jump down and take off. They didn't see the cloaking thing. The film picks it up. The video picks it up, whereas the eyes don't see it. And that's been another area of study, is why does the camera pick up things and why our eyes do not? Or why doesn't our brain perceive what we're seeing when the camera does pick it up? So what it looked like was, it looked like it had, because the background was green, it looked like it was shimmering in the green. And now it may not have been totally translucent, but it reflected enough of green where it looked like part of the scenery until it started moving. And, if you look at the video or online, you can actually kind of go back and forth on the actual clip, on the close-up of that, and actually watch what happens when something drops down and whips around, takes off. And you can make your own assumptions about what that is. I personally think it was just a young one, because there is a black area that moves with it, which I think is the head. I don't think the young have the ability to cloak as much as the adults do. I think it's a learned response, and I think they have to shroud the young ones, when they do cloak and take off. So, but it didn't look like a pixelation thing like you're talking about,
See, mine was standing still, and it was from the ground up to about 8-10 feet tall. And
now, did you see that? Was that with your own eyes?
My own eyes. There were 4 of us there. 2 of us could see it, and the other two who couldn't were literally getting frustrated. And they said, "Let's continue our walk." We walked to. This is all in my friend's 10-acre yard, and we walked to the front of the house. And about 20 seconds later, and that's when we heard the roar right behind us, and that was absolutely eerie, man. Absolutely eerie. I've never heard anything like that.
So you actually heard the roaring of the Bigfoot? Or the growl?
It's a roaring, growl / screaming type sound. It's phenomenal.
And it vibrates your guts, basically.
Yes, it does.
Part of the thing is the frequency that they use goes into infrasound, which they can actually vibrate those very, very low frequencies below audible range, and it can affect you because it'll transfer through the air and just vibrate everything. And they use that sometimes to dissuade people from getting closer. So it sounds like it was a response. It didn't sound like an inviting response for you to come closer, but rather that maybe you should take off.
See, I didn't feel intimidated by it. What I felt was as eerie as the sound was. Here's the first thing I noticed: it didn't echo. I was surprised it didn't echo, because in that area, every animal you heard echoed up the hill, and this did not echo. The other thing was, I think it was more a little bit of, yes, we are here, be careful around us. That's kind of the feeling that I got. I mean, I'm not going to lie and sit here that I didn't almost crap my pants when you hear this thing roaring behind you.
Right.
I'm not going to sit here and say that. However, I will say that when I look at that entire situation, it wasn't one of fear. I think it was almost like a confirmation.
So you felt that, in a lot of times your intuition will probably be correct, because they have the ability to put those thoughts in your head. And if that's what you felt, then that probably was a correct assumption.
I think so. Now, in your case, did you feel fear?
You know what? That's really an interesting question. I have never felt fear about the Sasquatch at all. Even in the times the only thing I fear when, I don't like going out at night, but it's more of a fear of animals, larger animals, or fear of people. But I've never had a fear of the Bigfoots. And one in particular, which if I have time to really get into this a little bit, the one that I had interaction with really helped me a lot. Now, and, I saw the light portal that rocked my world. That was earlier, that was in September. October is when I had the opportunity to go out in that same area. All this stuff seems to happen in this area, and there's something about this one little area that's almost like an interdimensional gateway, but I'll get into that later, okay? But everything seems to happen there. Now, there's other places too, but a lot of them happen here. Me going up the trail again on a sunny day, and there's this ridge over to the right. I know what shadows look like. Here's a tree, there's a set of trees, and you look underneath the trees, and you see how dark the shadows are. They're not pitch black. It's just a different shade of blacker, and you can still see through it because you can still see the ground underneath the trees and things like that. But imagine between these two trees, you see a black that's 3 times blacker than shadow. So black that you can't even see through the blackness. And what's more, this blackness has a shiny, shimmering, waving thing going on with it. That's what I encountered when I walked up there. And I'm looking between these two trees. I'm staring at this blackness. I said, it's blacker than the other side of the trees, either side of the trees. And it's moving. Something told me inside myself, and I had myself, at the time I didn't have a professional camera, I just had my cell phone. Something told me immediately I was actually watching a Bigfoot. And so something told me, I smiled in that direction, I waved at it, and then I got my cell phone and took a picture. Okay? Then I waited. I walked up a little bit closer to it. It was still shimmering. And then I walked a little bit closer about a minute later. No, about 30 seconds later, took another second picture. And but I, with my own eyes, I couldn't see anything but what I was describing. It wasn't until I was able to go home and use my computer to actually do some contrasting and lighting. And boy, was I surprised! And of course, I posted those pictures on the show link that if anybody wants to kind of peruse any of that, that's available there right now. But the first picture you see after I lighten it up was you actually see the Bigfoot smiling at me. He has kind of have a part. He's got like a widow's peak on top of his head. He's got a little bit of hair patch in the middle, smiling, and he's got his left hand holding a branch, and his right hand is extended out, waving back at me. Incredible. The second picture that I was able to lighten up, you can see the full body in both pictures. The second one, he's got his head turned to the to his left, and he's pointing to me. So that told me immediately he's bringing some other Sasquatch's attention to me and pointing me out. So I think what that discussion, what I'm surmising from both pictures, is they thought that was cool. That I figured out that they were there. And that I wasn't intimidated by it. I think they were impressed by that, and that kind of started the tone of how I felt about them from that day forward. And since then, I've had just numerous interactions with them that I have documented over the past 4 years, 3 or 4 years now, going on 4 years.
You mentioned when you had this. You mentioned when you had this one, kind of waving at you, and I've seen that picture. It is kind of very intriguing because you could definitely see the hand in it.
Yep.
You said that you believe there was a second one. So do you go along the lines of believing that they wander around in tandems or trios?
Oh, you mean as far as that? You mean traveling in pairs or with additional
Yes.
others?
Absolutely, yes.
Well, what I do see when I look at my pictures that they're a lot of times, especially when they're younger, they're clustered. I often see, if you see an adult, you always see young ones hanging on them. I mean, it's just, you want to talk about very family oriented. They always got something hanging on them, and I think that helps distort their image. As part of their ability to hide is to distort their contort their how they look based on having I call it the clustering effect. You know, it's kind of like, you ever play Twister before? You have a bunch of people that are interconnecting on that board on the floor with that thing, and that's kind of what this reminds me of. You know, when they're they get into such a way that you can't figure out the body parts and things like that. But more specifically to what you're saying, I've seen. I don't normally see them alone. I'll see a larger adult, and if you look in the picture closely, there will be maybe an adolescent with them, or different family members. So they're always traveling. They're always traveling in a small group. I mean, is that what you're kind of leading?
Yeah, that's very much what I'm alluding to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because I don't see them being singled out. You know, doing this alone. No, and they're very, which is telling me they're very family oriented. They're very clan oriented, and where one goes, a bunch of them go. You know, and I think it's for their protection. You know, there's reasons for it, and of course, when I get into maybe about this other subject, little people. Some of the things I found in my pictures when I started looking at. I assumed were babies at the time, you know, hanging on them. But then I started seeing even smaller proportionate beings hanging on the Bigfoots, and that's when I first got my first clue that the little people were involved in this a little bit. So there's a connection between the little people and the Bigfoots, big time. You know.
What do you think about these lawsuits that have been happening? Todd Standing started it in Alberta, British Columbia, and then in California, but now another lady has come forward that she is suing the California government to recognize Bigfoot as an actual creature.
I'm trying to stay out of that. I understand the intent, as noble as it is, and according to what I just read, that they pulled the lawsuit because it was written. This is according to something else I read. So that they wanted to get it prepared a little bit more professionally by a lawyer before they resubmitted it. I have my opinion about Todd Standing. I'd rather not vocalize that here. As far as the lady you're referring to, she's actually a good friend of mine, Claudia. And she had been up. I first met her up here in Washington when she went on one of her campouts. So, and she's worked with Todd, I guess, in this lawsuit and recognition. I think it's kind of. I really hate to express my opinion about this because I could get myself in a lot of hot water one way or the other. I don't think they need our protection necessarily. Okay. I think that what that lawsuit had to do with actual recognition of them as a species, but I don't know what the way the current environment is, governmental-wise or whatever, that's going to happen anytime too soon. You know, I honestly believe our powers that be actually do know they exist, and I think the biggest thing they want to try to convince people is that they don't exist, even though they know they exist. And there's a method to their madness as far as why they want to keep us in the dark about it. And I can see how people like myself or anybody that does this kind of research is kind of a threat of keeping their narrative going, you know, of disbelief. And I could care less because I want people to believe. You know?
But that brings up Samantha, that brings up a good point. Like, why do we need people to believe this? Because there are so many people who have been out in the forest. I'll give you an example. Last fall, I took a good friend of mine out. Bazooka Joe is what we call him around here. And he has been a hunter and a hunting guide for 30-plus years. When we walked into the forest, he was absolutely pointing out, oh, by the way, you just stepped over a wild horse track, or you stepped over a moose track. And I'm looking at the ground, I'm like, where? And he's like, well, do you see the indentation slightly there? He goes, that's the hoof of a horse, or whatever. He's just phenomenal. And he had never seen anything like this. And then I showed him where our print was, and lo and behold, that print was still there a year later. And he kneeled down beside that print, and for 15 minutes, the only thing that could come out of his mouth is, Dave, what the hell is that? Mm-hmm. And
he'd never seen anything like that before.
Never seen anything like that before. And, he was never a believer. He had nothing to believe. He's still a little skeptical, which I think is healthy. But on the flip side, he now has this urge to figure out what the hell made that print. And so I guess the real reasoning is, why do we need to prove this creature to anyone rather than just leave it alone? Because the minute man taps into something, we're not very good at taking care of it. Example, the white rhinoceros, the final male white rhinoceros that just died in Africa, and now there's only 2 females left, so there goes another species.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely correct. I mean, I from that standpoint, we're terrible stewards of the planet, and everything we touch, we want to ruin. And if nature does it naturally, we want to figure out an artificial way of doing it that's supposedly better than the way nature does it. You know what I mean? And the same with the one thing, case in point, is people got on my YouTube, people questioned me on a couple of media and said, oh, so you want to try to prove something to somebody, you want to prove that Bigfoot? No, not at all. I could care less if anybody believes that Bigfoot's real or not. It's a personal thing. It says what I'm trying to do is encouraging people to go out in the woods and have their own experiences. I do not even want people to know, and a lot of us feel this the same way, is where we do our research. We're not publicizing that, as much as we can, not publicize it, because we simply don't want a ton of people going up in those areas, looking for something. Or, the first reaction some people says, oh, there's a Bigfoot up there, let's get our guns and shoot it. It's that stupid mentality that some people have. And, there's no, as far as I'm concerned, I have to question it. I said, the real reason I do this, any of this, is trying to reach people because there's a message, a hidden message underneath all of this. And it's something that I think can benefit mankind. And that's the pure motive behind being involved in this in the first place. It is about engendering a personal relationship with them, because it is a very intriguing thing to get to know them, because you learn a little bit more about yourself. Humans learn a lot more about themselves. You can contrast how we live with how they live, and then you can start to see we haven't been doing it right.
Well, for sure, for sure. I mean, if it isn't broken, we like to fix it anyways. That's just the way. Yeah. That's just the way it really is. It really is that way, and there's nothing we can do to change that whatsoever. But in the end, there are so many people out in the forest. Why do you think then that maybe we aren't having more sightings? Could it be simple, or a simple answer as to this question, whether or not people are even looking for it? Because if they're not looking for it, the chances are they're not going to see it.
Well, that's interesting you said that, because I think there are more sightings happening. It depends. Like if you go out in the Cascades at the general store, we've had a book where people can log in whenever they saw something, or that book is just filled with people. Yeah, they don't mind they'll put it anonymously in there. But they'll register in things that they saw. You know, I think there's more and more people seeing things. They just have hesitated up till now to say something about it. But I'm starting to see a trend where people are loosening up a bit and being able to admit that they actually had an experience. So I think more of this is happening now, you know, with time. I think because let me give you an example, like in Greenwater. When I first got to Greenwater, people lived there all their lives. A lot of people did. And when you ask them about Bigfoot, well, it's just a myth or whatever, because you didn't really hear nothing about it. But fast forward about 4 years later, and there's always a stranger. There's always someone in town that just had an experience. I mean, it's phenomenal, the exponential increase that people have had experiences. And now the level of belief in that town has just turned night and day. Matter of fact, we have 2 wooden statues erected of Bigfoot in town, you know, at the 2 different stores. It's just we have this level of belief and hear them every so often, and that it's amazing, you know, especially when they go camping up some of the Forest Service roads. There's always somebody coming in getting really excited because they heard something. They found some footprints or some other evidence, or even saw an actual, you know, a sighting of them walking across the road or up a hill or something like that. So it is happening more and more up here.
And what are the reactions then from the people who are having this first time experience?
Oh, it just first word that comes to mind is being unglued. You know, I think it's shake up their world a little bit, which I think is great. You know, they've heard about this stuff before. I mean that I will say that even though the shows have been on TV, like I always call it Not Finding Bigfoot, but you know, the different Bigfoot shows, even though sometimes they don't exactly paint the kind of picture you want to have of them, has really raised the public awareness of the Sasquatch and the Bigfoot, and I think it's really helped. And you know, you bring it to a conscious level, and I think with that on their mind, I think it helps when they do go out in the woods, and then all of a sudden, you put that in their consciousness, and then that also helps them have that experience because now they're more aware of it. You know.
Are the sightings that are happening now are in a more frequent way? Are they in a segmented vicinity of the forest, or are they happening all over the place?
There's a specific thing that you look for. Like I don't doubt seriously you're going to have a Bigfoot sighting in downtown Seattle, for instance. You get my drift. In other words, there are some characteristics I found that their ability to have God, I can't even speak tonight. I'm just tongue-tied. Habituate in certain areas. One of them has to do with like green belts, for instance. Areas where there's strips of land where there's water is a big factor. So if there's a stream nearby that can provide water and possibly life, and you know, whether it's fish and things like or salmon that runs through there, and then you have the green belt that connects 2 different areas and then eventually back into the national forest. We found there's a lot of high activity in those things. We even noted that in certain urban areas where they have internal forest sanctuaries, for instance, that there's activity in there as well. You know, how they get there, I mean, even if something as small as a quarter mile diameter area of woods with some lakes or ponds have activity. So It is amazing. It's because I hear about these reports, and we had like folks came up like Bonnie Lake. They came up to our area. Now I'm familiar with Bonnie Lake, for instance. And Bonnie Lake sits on a ridge that overlooks the valley down below, and so we just had a sighting. It says, and I said, do you live right on the edge of the green, where as it drops down, there's a forested area. I call it the Greenbelt area as well. I say, how did you know that? And it says, I just figured, because that's pretty much where you expect to find them. You know, they've always been reported on Greenbelt areas. That's important.
My friend, I'm going to get you to hold on right there, because we have to hop out for our first break of the night here. And we are talking Sasquatch tonight with Samantha Ellen Ritchie. She is a researcher in Washington State. We're going to get more into Sasquatch, what it is. What about Mount St. Helens? What about interdimensional beings, portals, little people? We got a lot to talk about over the next couple of hours with Samantha, so stick around. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it as well. Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio coming up right after this.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Lori and Fenton here, SOR listeners. Join me at UFOCon 2018 in South San Francisco, California, March 23rd through 25th, where 14 presenters discuss all things disclosure, UFOs, and aliens. Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, and Melinda Leslie address disclosure. Preston Dennett will present Inside UFOs. Your Dave Scott and Lynn Buchanan tell of amazing alien contact. Get tickets at caufocon.com.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Laurie and Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Hey Space Travelers, it's Joe Roop, your host of Spaced Out Saturdays. Come join me as we explore the realms of the paranormal, the esoteric, and everything in between every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. You know the truth is out there. Don't get caught sleepwalking. Come join Spaced Out Saturdays. That's every Saturday night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, right here on SpacedOutRadio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at SpacedOutRadio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at SpacedOutRadio.com.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spaceoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spaceoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over Spaced Out Radio Night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Elizabeth Anglin will be hosting for me as I will be making my way down to San Francisco for UFO Con 2018 at the Holiday Inn Airport Hotel in San Francisco. So if you're in the area, UFO Con 2018. Holiday Inn Airport Hotel this weekend in San Francisco. I will be speaking at 3:30 Pacific Time, 6:30 Eastern on Sunday. I am going to be putting my speech on my Facebook page, so if you're part of my Facebook page and you want to see it, you can go in there. That's my personal page. You can go in there and check it out live on Sunday at 3:30. Elizabeth Anglin's guest will be Glenn Steckling. We will be talking about the Apollo moon landings and what's happening on the moon today. Friday night, Joe Roop will be in with his guest, Thomas Seawood, on Friday night. So I will be back on Monday with Butch Witkowski. It'll be a long day on Monday, but It's going to be a lot of fun indeed this weekend. Hope you all can try and get to San Francisco this weekend. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on The Fringe FM, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to revolution.radio and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. I got to take a deep breath for this one. So tiny to read, Bill. Uvolopalato-pharyngoplasty. Uvolopalato-pharyngoplasty. I said it very slow. I don't know how to say that fast. Uvolopalato-pharyngoplasty is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, space travelers, as Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can watch us live on periscope.tv. You can also follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio, and our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, rock out to some Bumblefoot, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read The Encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more at spacedoutradio.com. We're talking Bigfoot, little people, the weird things that happen with the creatures of the forest, and no better person to talk to about this than Samantha Ellen Ritchie, a researcher out of Washington State. Welcome back.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Samantha, you got to do me a favor, because I know you live down in Tacoma.
Sure.
You got to go for a burger at Frisco Freeze for me.
No, okay.
I would appreciate that. Now,
would you want me to? I know that we talked earlier. I know that you've had one before. Do you really want me to kind of get one and just call you up and just say and give you a description of?
Yes.
Oh, this tastes so terribly good, and
yes.
Have you just? You'll just want to just come down south and actually just make a special trip just to
yes,
get
I
one,
will.
you know.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Now, and please take a picture, because the beautiful part about these burgers is the amount of grease that soaks through the paper. So Frisco Freeze, for people who don't know, it's this burger joint in Tacoma. It doesn't have any tables, nothing. It has been going, 70 years now? Is it about 70?
Long time.
70 years it's been open. And it was started to raise money for a local high school football program. And they only hired the high school football players there who would get the nights off during football games, obviously. But eventually it morphed into being fully staffed as it became more popular. Incredible milkshakes, incredible burgers. Oh, my mouth is just watering thinking about it right now. So you got to do me that favor.
I'll put that on my list.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. You know, we've been talking Bigfoot around the state of Washington and your area. One of the most curious places for adventure when it comes to Sasquatch is around Mount St. Helens. And I don't think you could be a Sasquatch researcher in Washington State and not try and figure out what the hell is actually happening in Ape Canyon. Now, we do know Ape Canyon was wiped out on May 18th, 1980, when Mount St. Helens erupted, and basically the side of the mountain came down right over top of it. But has that area ever came back to what it was for the Sasquatch?
That's a good... there's a lot of reports of activity. And honestly, I've driven, there is a Forest Service road that I take. I go down to, I've been down to Carson, Washington, which you can actually cut right straight on the Forest Service road that runs straight east, north and south, which is directly east of Mount St. Helens. So a lot of that area has been restored, except, at the very top of that mountain and everything, but it's got a dome being built too. However, there is a lot of activity. I've been on campouts just outside of Carson, which what we call Wind River Road up there, and we've had the activity, during our campout. I have actually had the opportunity to take one picture of one of them up in the tree, so that's one of my collection that I have. And when we were at Carson, we were out. I've had some personal experiences, like messing with my camera, for instance, and draining my battery and things like that. The last time I went, which was in September of last year, when we had those horrendous fires up this way, especially when Oregon was having all that problem down near Portland and all that. And matter of fact, I was with Connie. Connie was up this way. Connie Willis was up this way too. So there was some really strange activity at the place we were staying there. We actually had a white Bigfoot creature, that came out of the woods, and it wasn't a very nice experience for the person that was had to, it was a little intimidating. So I'm not really sure what's going on down there. I know there is activity, but, I try to stay in my own neck of the woods. I know I'm more familiar with what goes on around Mount Rainier, and there's a lot to be said about familiarity. Like, they know me, basically, around Mount Rainier. Now, especially in that little section of Mount Rainier, I think they really, really have gotten to know who I am and who are, like Barb and different ones that actually live there and interact with them. I have gone to the other side of Mount Rainier, however, which is towns, LB. It's the backside of Mount Rainier, so the exact opposite side. And there's activity over there, but I get a different feel from them. That it's a different kind of personality. So I think different groups of the Bigfoots have different personality groups, and a lot of it has to do if they personally know you or not. I think they can communicate with each other. Like all the clans can communicate, but I think that it does help if one clan is really familiar with who you are, because it's that level of trust that you need to build up with them, because they just won't give that trust up to anyone.
I know the feeling, because we have a Sasquatch gifting site up here that we put together. We haven't been there since December when the snow started falling, because, well, let's just face it, there's about 4.5 feet of snow there, and it's kind of hard to get into. But we're hoping to get in there by mid to late April to see what we're able to see there. So one time after we set it up, we actually had some movement around us. And you'll understand when I say this, and you just get that eerie feeling that something not right is watching you. And it just doesn't feel like an animal. And Bazooka Joe and I, we were out there and heard the heavy footsteps, and it was eerie. Like we knew they were around. Maybe just wandering back after the forest fires, which permeated our area up here last fall. But it's very, very intriguing, and I'm a firm believer that they do need to get to know you. So, I make sure that I park in the exact same spot every time, and I try to do everything the exact same. How long did it take for you to build that trust where they knew who you were coming into the forest?
It's hard to get... Hold on a second. It's hard to really gauge a time. It's just a slow building process. It really was. It's really about frequency, about being frequent in the woods, and being on your best behavior when you do go out there. So for me, it was always about going to this one area and setting and meditating, and I would literally actually go ahead and speak to them. I would do it because I know they understand English. I just know they understand English. And I would just talk, just like I'm trying to talk to you or someone else about my concerns about the Earth. It's a more general discussion, but I want to, what you're emanating several things when you're talking. You're emanating that sincerity, your heartfelt concern about everyone and everything. They sense that. They can sense that from you, and that gets built up over time. And then pretty soon, they sense it so much that they radiate it back to you. And then you start sensing that they are trusting you. You actually feel that from them. And it becomes almost like a symbiotic relationship at that point. And then you know what to expect when you go out there. You're not expecting them to jump out and say hi or anything. You know they're going to have their place in the forest, but they're going to leave you subtle hints that they're around. Whether it's through a stick cliff or maybe they'll do a couple of wood knocks. For me, it's been little bitty wood knocks, in certain patterns and things like that, and small glyphs. At times, it's actually been a call. It's been a little while since they've done that. And then of course there's this whole this whole thing with a empathic connection, which is a whole different level. I don't know if we get into that right now at this moment, but it's allowed me to, I'll just go ahead and say it, it has allowed me to actually feel what they're feeling. And when I go out there, you can actually feel the forest. You can actually feel what the forest is thinking or feeling. It's not just coming from them, it's actually coming from everything, when you're out there. And then you start to understand things, and over time it's translated in actual thoughts, concerns, what we should be doing, and the whole 9 yards. So
I have to get upset.
I don't want to go off topic or anything. I could go off on a tangent.
I think it's fantastic when you do. I love it when it happens. But I do have to get upset at one of my listeners on Twitter, Jeff Gear, who has been posting pictures of Frisco Freeze now on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. And
I call that a distraction.
Well, I can tell you right now, my stomach has started growling. Because it's like my stomach is telling me, remember those burgers? Remember? Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. Yeah, and he just actually posted a picture of one of the milkshakes too. Son of a wife, really? Come on, man.
You're gonna make me want to. You're actually going to make me want to go to Frisco Freeze tomorrow after I get up.
Well, you should.
Literally have a hamburger for breakfast.
You absolutely should. I highly recommend that. That's quite the dietary substance there. But oh my goodness, I am just those burgers.
Yeah, they got the special called the Heart Stopper. I think I'll get that.
Yes, please do. Please take a nice photograph and tag me in it on Facebook. I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Getting back to Bigfoot momentarily here, there are a lot of people who believe that Bigfoot is telepathic, and when you are meditating or whether you are trying to gain communication, that you could actually try telepathy to get in touch with them. Have you tried that? And if so, has it been successful?
Oh, okay. Well, let me just say something about that. Everything is telepathic. Animals are telepathic with each other. The Bigfoot's, of course, telepathic with each other. Humans have telepathy, and they don't realize it. How many times you pick up the phone and all of a sudden your mom's calling you at the same time? You know what? Things like that. I was just thinking about you. Humans have this untrained. They have the telepathy, but it's very untrained or unfocused. And a lot of times, we can transmit our thoughts out with no problem. The problem is our receiver seems to be broken half the time. It's not on, or at least we through distraction, we don't listen to that small voice that's talking back to us. So the Bigfoots, when you're out in the forest, they can read your thoughts, and they probably even try to transmit their thoughts to you. But you have to be able to be receptive to receiving messages. Your mind has to be uncluttered, and it's usually through meditation, things like that, where you can start sensing those thoughts. It's not like you're going to hear a voice in your head and all of a sudden you can, I have not experienced what they call a voice in your head talking. No, it doesn't work that way. At least in my case, it has to be, or maybe telepathy works in such a way where you're actually receiving a thought pops in your head, and it's just a consecutive stream of thoughts that pop in your head. I sometimes call that a knowledge download, but I think that's the kind of thing that they'll transmit to you only if you've kind of trained yourself and developed that through meditation, But everyone is telepathic.
But do you believe, though, that telepathy can transcend from human to creature?
Oh, yeah. Yep. I think animals...
Go ahead, sorry.
Even animals can... I know in my case, I've become more highly sensitive in that area. And I'll look down and I could look at a dog looking at me, for instance, a strange dog, and all of a sudden he'll start wagging his tail, and look at those eyes, and all of a sudden it's like I'm reading those thoughts. Like he's reading me. He's sensing that I'm thinking about him, and I could see that. So I know he's reading my thoughts, or at least in a rudimentary sense. And then I'm probably responding back, says in kind. It's amazing when you see that sometimes, But you have to actually be aware or have enough awareness that sort of thing happens, Do
you have any? Do you have any conclusive examples that you could share with us to maybe tell us what went on for the audience to get a picture in their head?
With regards to animals or with the Bigfoot?
Well, with the Bigfoot, telepathically.
Telepathically? It's not going to be anything that's dramatic where, I could tell you that all of a sudden I just had this thought and all of a sudden it just started telling me its name and all that. It doesn't happen that way, at least in my case. I know some people, I will honestly say, I think there's some people who have more advanced telepathic connection with them. I have more of an empathic connection where I'm feeling a sense, let's say it's a complex emotion. I'm trying to make some sense of an emotion when I go out in the forest, and I'm sensing that, okay? And then a little bit later on, that complex emotion, I have to kind of figure out and translate that into an actual meaning. Like, what does this mean exactly that I'm feeling? And then I'll get another complex, I'll get some other emotional response or something, and then I'll piece that together. It's almost like a jigsaw puzzle over time, so I don't get the complete message in one setting. It's like I'll get a series of different messages or bits of messages, and then they kind of get pieced together like a jigsaw puzzle until there's a clearer picture of what's going on. And then sometimes it takes a form that's almost subliminal sometimes, where you just, in the other way, definitely I think it's through dreams too. I've been having more surreal dreams, but sometimes I'll wake up. I know I'm dreaming way more since I've had contact with them. But the problem is they'll be very intense, and I know they're intense, but I'll wake up and they just kind of dissipate, from my consciousness. But something deep down inside that's happening in these dreams is kind of conditioning me to feel and think a certain way, and I think this is all part of that. All part of it. I know it's not maybe what someone wants to hear. Like I got this grand message. I just channeled Bigfoot or something like that. It's a little bit more subliminal than that, I think, at least in my case.
Let's get to a couple questions from our audience here. Jade is asking, Samantha, have you ever heard of Bigfoot being seen with lights or UFOs at the same time?
Definitely there's lights associated with them, you know. I will say that you see Bigfoots and sometimes you see orbs. Orbs seem to be a big factor. The place that I call the Field of Dreams, that's just a designation. That's just a personal designation that only a few people are aware of. That designates the spot that I've been talking about where all this activity takes place. And it's a special area because it's definitely probably has a high vortex of energy that goes on there. But I've taken a person out there and who has since moved and says, come on out to, his name is Jim. I'm sure I could just say Jim. Would come out there and he wanted to have an experience. So we were going out there at night, and I don't think the moon was out either, so it was pretty dark. And he seemed to be seeing better than I did because it was just pitch black. And we'd be looking up on the ridge that's just on one side of that area, and all of a sudden, imagine a white light that's shining straight up into the trees, almost like someone had a not a really super bright flashlight, but something that was on the ground that was shining up into the trees so you could see light reflecting off the branches. And then it would intensify and you'd see this column of light coming up. And then all of a sudden it starts to dim, and then all of a sudden another part of the ridge, all of a sudden the light started lighting up, and it started lighting up that column of trees around that little spot. And that was happening back and forth in different parts, and he was going, oh my God, oh my God. I mean, he was just blown away by those experiences of seeing those lights. Okay, so there's definitely lights have a big factor in that. I will mention that one experience that, and I'll go into the UFO thing in a second here, but the one experience of him seeing the column of lights was something told me, it says, would you like the Bigfoots to actually verbally say something to you or call to you? And then within 5 seconds after I said that, from a bit of a distance, maybe about a half a mile up, there was a pretty loud call, just like that, you know, in response to my asking. So that pretty much made his day. It really convinced him that this was real. Now, as far as the UFOs, there is a big connection with that. As a matter of fact, there was a tie-in with an area where I'll just call him Camper John or John the Camper, who I documented in my last book. He was a strange one. He wasn't strange. He was just there. I don't even say that. I'm saying this stuff on the air like that. He was camping there at the time we were having our group camp out. And he was, I think he was a ranger in the military at one point. And he was and he saw what we were doing. I says, yeah, we're doing Bigfoot research. And I said, really? And then all of a sudden, for some reason, he just had this real familiarity. Him and his girlfriend at the time were actually experiencing Bigfoots. They would come around. They would during the camp all the time, and they were actually living out in the woods at the point. At that point, and then some of the young ones would come up and the younger daughter, they'd hear her talking to them at night. And one day, John, his girlfriend, came into Greenwater in town and said, Sam, you need to come out here right away. John's doing something that just will blow your minds. And I thought maybe he was going to call a Bigfoot in or something. So we get out there, and I get out there. It's like night, and it was around a blood moon that was taking place at the time. So he said, "Let me show you." He just bowed his head, and all of a sudden there was a lot of calls and whoops and things like that, and the Bigfoots were responding to him somehow because he was talking to them in his mind. And so that's pretty impressive. And he said, "No, that's not what I want to show you." So he goes around the back of the tent near the road, and he looks around at the sky. It's a clear blue sky with the stars shining. And he finds he's looking up, and he sees one particular dimly lit star, and he focused my attention on it. You see that, Sam, up there? He triangulates where that star's at. So he's pointing at it. He said, "Now watch very carefully." So he's pointing at it, then he starts moving his finger across the sky, and the light in the sky moves. The star moves. And then it's not a star, obviously. It's a UFO. He takes his finger and he does a U motion, and he literally controls the light, and it also does a U pattern in the sky. He's actually manipulating whatever's up there from his mental ability on the ground. So he was telling me beforehand he was getting movie clips in his head where he would see who was up there, and he'd actually see a being. And I came back and I saw a picture up in the tree of something that looked like a Bigfoot, and I was able to enhance the picture. I showed him the picture one day, and he says, "That's who I saw in the ship." He says he saw something that looked like that, the Bigfoot in the ship. Like whoever was piloting the ship would look like a Bigfoot. Oh, the picture I showed him. And it was the most bizarre experience, because to see something like that just kind of like reminded me when I saw the light portal. It says, I didn't think anything could top that, but seeing somebody manipulate a UFO in the sky, especially a human, or so I thought, was kind of like, I told him right afterwards, I says, "Man, I would have paid you $200 to see this. This is just unbelievable." Then I asked him, "Who are you?" You know, I'm thinking, am I dealing with a hybrid or something? But I found out later that he was in a home or an orphanage because his birth mother didn't like the idea that he was moving pencils from across the table. I mean, the guy knew how it was using telekinesis at an early age. So why and how he had these abilities, I have no idea. He's long since disappeared and moved on to a different part of the country. But that story is is what I saw as a connection with that. And, honestly, since I've been involved in doing this research, has led into different things, and also the fact afterwards I've been seeing more in the sky myself. I came home to my home in Tacoma, just happened to look up in the cloud, and there was a silver sphere, and I looked up, I saw it, and then it just kind of slowly moved itself behind the cloud, as if it kind of sensed that I was sensing it. But I also got the eerie feeling that I was being monitored. And that is another problem, because I've been in a different part of town, saw one just up in the sky, and nobody else was noticing it. And it was more of a saucer-shaped vehicle. A smaller one, hovering about 100 feet up, with 3 circular round areas underneath it as part of, maybe for propulsion or whatever. But I've seen these things. I've seen these about 2 or 3 times, and they all seem to be connected. There seems to be a connection between once you become aware of what's going on in the woods or in the forest, it ultimately leads back to alien, the portals, alien, UFO, everything.
I would agree with that. I want to get back to the gifting sites, because I do have a question with that. But what is your opinion, first and foremost, of gifting sites?
They served their purpose for us in the beginning. I mean, I know Barb was initially doing that, and what the gifting area did was to it would allow you to see it was an indirect way of being able to interact with a Bigfoot, to see what they liked, what they were interested in. So we would put a number of items on like a stump, like a little marbles, or we'd put a little book out there, or it wasn't necessarily just. And we hate the idea we're not out there baiting bears or nothing like that. I mean, it was definitely when it had to do with a food item, it was sealed. First of all, for no intention that an animal could get to it, and hung in such a way that only a human, other than Bigfoot, would be able to get access to it. And because we wanted to confirm that, yes, it was a humanoid that I was actually getting access to. Let's say a jar of peanut butter, and I did that a couple of times myself, and I actually had, I had a thing of peanut butter they got into, and you could tell how a stick was being poked inside of it to get the peanut butter out. Animals don't hold sticks to poke peanut butter to get peanut butter out of jars, and especially drag it off 30 feet away to do it. But we did it a few times, but it's been a number of years. We just, something told us that it wasn't necessary to do that anymore. So we kind of moved on to other things other than just simply gifting. I think it's okay if it's done in a limited sense. Now, if you leave something out there, you should check it the very next day, if it is some kind of food item that's specifically for them. Because the longer it's out there, it just doesn't kind of serve your purpose, because then you're increasing the odds that animals can get to it.
We don't
you don't want.
We don't leave food at ours. There's too many animals in that area. We got grizzly bears in the area, black bears, wolves, moose, wild horses.
Yeah, you don't want to do that at all.
We don't leave the food. We have just a bunch of trinket type items out there. From shiny Christmas decorations to Hot Wheels cars to some glass rocks that are on those hardened glass rocks that go in vases. We got those in shapes on the ground, and we've had a couple of those move strangely, but we haven't had anything overbearing just yet. But this leads to Kevin's question. He says, do you think that leaving items such that they would like, I would imagine they would like something salty along with something sweet, also by bringing them, any other type of gifting that you would recommend?
Oh, that's a tough one. It really is tough. Can't make any real recommendations on it. I know they like peanut butter at one, and really that comes to the and like I said, anything that has to do with food nowadays, it has to do with complete discretion. It has to be done in such a controlled manner that animals aren't getting to it at all, or because you're increasing the danger. So you got to know your area. The reason why we found a long time ago they like peanut butter was because of the protein. There would be a certain time of the year, now we noticed that when the salmon was running through our areas, those salmon either comes or goes, different parts of the year. When the salmon were prevalent, the protein, the peanut butter dropped off. So they were getting their protein from the salmon. And, when salmon wasn't running, that's the times they were doing that. But we were finding that with time that they just kind of were losing interest in the human food. I don't know if it's because of the additives in our food were catching up to them, and they kind of got wise to some of the stuff that, hey, this is not really healthy for us to eat anymore, But it's just something we all stopped doing. Now, there are still a few members of a group that still do it in certain areas, and but it's okay if you, like I said, for you to initially try it to see if there's activity in your area, it's great to do as long as it's done in a controlled manner.
This gets to Joseph's question. He's asking, I'm going on a solo camping trip in a couple of months. Do you have any tips for making friendly contact with Bigfoot that may be nearby?
Well, that's a broad question. You know, there is a tendency if you are going out there solo, if your attitude is important when you go out there. If you're going out there just to, hey, I think I'm going to raise Bigfoot, I'm going to grab the stick, I'm going to bang on this tree 100 times or what, yeah, that's not the way to do it. You want to go out there in a more peaceful manner. They also like, part of the thing is too, is if you're able to go out there, I think you have more success if you're going someplace on a frequent basis, like not just like a singular camping trip where I'm going to go out for 5 days and see if the Bigfoot will come around. Well, you know, it takes a lot longer. We're going back to this trust issue where they're going to keep their distance until they know who they're dealing with, you know, until they got you figured out. You know, at some point in time when, if you're worthy enough, they're going to get your number, and it doesn't matter where you go, you're going to have contact. That's what happens. Once you start having contact with them, that's the key. Once you get there, then all of a sudden it's like the floodgates are open. You constantly have some kind of interaction going on all the time, you know. But it's just getting to that point. And it's far easier. You don't have to really go long distances. Like some people think you got to go deep in the forest to find them. So just find yourself a nice patch of woods and just look for kind of evidence of stick structures and things like that might be evidence that they're out there. This would be indicative of if he lives near a forested area that has some pretty good acreage to it, or like the water sources that I talked about. This would be all good indications of that, and then just do the minimal gifting area just to see if there's any activity, you know. That way, because if it's close to where you live, then you can go to it more frequently and increase your chances that they're going to interact with you. You know, not to say that if you're going out there camping by yourself that you won't have some kind of interaction. Anything's possible. I'm just saying that from my experience, it's something that just doesn't happen automatically. I have a lot of people go out and say, oh, they hear about my experiences and they want to come out there and they want I'm going to take them out and they're going to have an experience. No, they're not. It's not going to happen that way. You know, I had to go out there a long time and multiple trips. I mean, numerous, hundreds of trips out in the woods to get to a point where they're making some kind of interactions with me. It's persistence.
Mm-hmm. Joseph's followed up by saying he's planning on making little paintings on small canvases and putting them high up in trees and also blessing them ahead of time.
Well, hey, they recognize spirituality. And if it's coming from the heart, they'll know it. That's a big factor. That's a really big factor with them. You got to kind of approach this from a spiritual, meditative standpoint if you really want to tap into their soul.
All right, let's get to another question here. This one from the preacher. He is asking, couldn't tree knocking be a territorial display as well?
It's been used as a form of communication. In the past, I will relate someone else's experience who was out in the woods. This is early on in an early stage of this researcher's experience, but it was relayed to me this way, that when she was out in the woods and she heard the knock. She heard a knock over there, and so she figured she was hearing a set of 3 knocks up the way. So she decided to do 3 knocks herself. But it come to find out there were like three different Bigfoots that were triangulating. They were using the knocks to, I think it had to do with herding the elk or whatever. And she was interfering with their communication pattern by doing the knocks. Anyway, what happened, all of a sudden, she got surrounded by the 3. She could hear them coming in all 3 directions. and she heard a really grunt noise, and like the way it came across her was, we didn't appreciate that. Don't do that anymore. So I know in that particular case it was used for a specific purpose, for communication. As far as territorial claim, they already know that, different clans are part of different parts of the forest. So it isn't like a threat. They're not trying to use that, say, this is our turf, stay away, when they're doing the knocks. The knocks are specifically like lists, are used for communication purposes. And sometimes people are questioning if they're even knocking a tree with a stick. I don't think it's the case. They have that, like we alluded to earlier, they have that deep ability with their guttural system, with their lungs, to simulate really low tones, to the point where I think the tree knocking is actually done by them directly from themselves. They're able to simulate that sound where it sounds like a tree knock. So
that is very strange. I never heard that before.
Or a clicking noise. I've heard a lot of that too. So they can imitate a lot of noise. We know that they're able to imitate the barred owls, the different kinds of birds, the different kinds of howls and things like that. They also can imitate different kinds of sounds, and including knocking sounds or clacking sounds and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Do you buy into the whole theory then that Bigfoot is an interdimensional species? That it can just whisk in and out? Or maybe it uses some sort of portal mechanism that it can just disappear on the fly?
I would say a combination. I already know personal experiences from, I've seen some, just from several people I know. I know that the gal that I was talking about just a minute ago saw her first experience was seeing the Bigfoot running with the elk or running after the elk, thinking to herself, what's a mountain ape doing out in Washington State? That was her first reaction. And she's watching this. She's since given a description of it. It was obviously a Bigfoot. But she's watching this Bigfoot run and is running really fast, and then it runs. There's a tree that's between her and the Bigfoot. As the Bigfoot's running towards the tree, or she's expecting the Bigfoot to continue on past the tree. And all of a sudden, he's running, and it disappears. It's just like he runs past the tree, and there's nothing. It's gone. Just disappears. So we'll also know another gentleman who has had experiences, several people I know, where you see the rustling in the grass, and something's running through the grass, and actually something's invisible, and actually you can feel it shoving against you, but nothing's there. Or they had their dog. It looked like their dog was suspended in the air, or that holding up, something invisible was holding the paws up, but the dog looks like it was walking on its own. These are things that I talked to, the experiences that people had told me about that. So now in the case of invisibility or translucence, that doesn't necessarily mean they went to another dimension. I think there's a special ability that even the military is starting to understand, certain concepts of stealthness, or being able to, cloaking cloth, or some ways to manipulate the light around you using heat. And that's another area of study that I've been more involved in. Has to do with color, has to do with being able to redirect energy around you in such a way it can bend light, So I think that's more, that there is more of a, it's not interdimensional in that part. The interdimensional part, we're actually moving into a different dimension. One of the two things is either through a portal, which actually will change your energy pattern to conform to a different dimension. And what we're talking about is quantum. We only exist in this world because of a quantum pattern that we all have in common. These portals, when they transport us, they change our energy signature so that we either co-locate somewhere else or we end up in a different pattern that's unlike the one we're in, and therefore we seem invisible to this world. So that's what's going on with that. And I've been doing more research about portals, and it's been fascinating because I'm learning some things that have to do with frequency, as part of the stuff I'm writing about right now about has to do with time. That's another factor. I mean, I can go in that more in depth. I know we're answering different people's questions, but I think there's a lot of things that we take for granted as humans when it comes to capabilities. We're always expecting everything to be solid, everything to be like us, everything that has a, time is the same for us as in everything else, and it's simply not true. There are things that are different out there that we don't see. It's because those things are different, because time is different for these other creatures. If their time is so fast that they move so quickly or can change their perception of time, we might be looking and they may be moving around all over the place within a split second. We wouldn't know it. So anyway.
It's very funny you mentioned that because Jody Cook was on this show a few weeks ago talking about Bigfoot and Dogman from Ohio, and it was strange because he thought Bigfoot was more an earthly creature, but when it came to Dogman, he was saying the exact same thing that you were in regards to the cloaking, the disappearing, the potential of using quantum physics to move in and out of certain areas.
Yep.
I find that very intriguing.
And don't dismiss this. You got to really open your mind up when it comes to certain things. Don't dismiss the idea that they don't have technology either. That they do have technology. That there is technologies that I believe that they have access to that can further enhance what they can do. And the same is true from these other smaller beings that I'm seeing. I've seen cases where the Bigfoots have been watching me at my cabin. I've taken pictures, and this is where it gets bizarre, is because it looks like little people. I'm not really sure because of the distance in the woods, but I'll see a face, a Bigfoot or something. All of a sudden there will be a square device that's kind of attached to their eye or something, kind of like you see on the Borg on Star Trek or something like that. Like some kind of device, because it's not natural. It's very squared off, and it's not pixelation either. It's just something that's very, very distinct. I've seen this on little people, too, carrying devices around. And it's making me think that that whoever they are, that they also have the mastery of time and space and technology that maybe we as humans have probably lost that in the last catastrophe, where we had to have a complete reset to our civilization. I'm thinking that the civilization that the little people belong to, or the Bigfoots, never lost their technology. They didn't have a major reset. They're one with nature, but they also have probably the advanced technology that was never lost in the first place, which means that they have to have They have to have a connection with the ETs and space brothers and things like that. That they never lost that relationship. They're not living under the delusion like we are. Okay.
I want to get into little people in the next hour in regards to it.
Sure.
Because I think that we only got about 2 minutes until we got to go to break here, that it's going to be way too much to get into right before a break here. But when it comes to the Sasquatch, where we've seen videos and pictures of Sasquatch prints in the snow, and they just end. And if you look at the tracks, there is no turning back where the Bigfoot reversed itself or anything along those lines. What is your explanation for something like that?
That's good that you mentioned that. in the short time we got, because one of the pictures on the link is a footprint in the snow behind the tavern, and it's a lone footprint. Here's the snow. I'm walking up to this footprint, but there's no other footprints. No one could have faked it because there's no footprints leading to it. It's a singular footprint in the middle of this forest made by a Bigfoot, because it's much, much bigger than my foot. That means that it's either one of two things, that it either has the ability when it's invisible that doesn't leave a physical trace, and then all of a sudden when it decides to intentionally leave a footprint, I think it's very intentional why they do that. Or, for someone like me to find it and ponder over it. Or they are up in the trees and all they need is 1 foot to jump down and propel themselves and push down the snow and push back up again, so that they're only leaving the singular footprint. Those are the only 2 things that I can think of that would be the case.
By our gifting site, we have found 2 separate prints. A left print that was about 18 inches by about 9 inches wide, and we found a right footprint, which was about 12.5 to 13 inches long and about 6 inches wide. And once again, just 1 print, nothing more. And the more I talk to Sasquatch researchers about this, and I'm going to get you to hold on here while we go to break here, the more I talk to Sasquatch researchers about this, they're starting to notice this 1 print factor as well in their research. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to hold on for another break here. Samantha Ellen Ritchie is our guest tonight. We're talking Bigfoot. We're going to get into a little bit more Bigfoot. We're going to talk about the footprints, but we're also going to get into the little forest people as well in the next hour. So stay tuned. 1 more hour of SOR tonight coming up right after this, along with the thought of the Dave.
Hello, SOR listeners. Lori and Fenton here. Let me ask you, now that disclosure's happened, what does it mean for ufology? For answers, join us at UFOCon 2018 in South San Francisco, California, March 23rd through 25th. Keynote speakers Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, and Melinda Leslie address the current disclosure agenda. Dave Scott, yes, you're Dave Scott, and Lynn Buchanan tell of amazing alien encounters. Get your tickets at caufocon.com. That's caufocon.com.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
We're lighting the void on Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio. Hey, this is Joe Roop, and I'm hanging out in SOR headquarters every Saturday night, bringing you the latest news when it comes to the weird and strange. Bigfoot, occult, UFOs, ghosts, and everything in between, I got you covered. You can tune in to spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Come travel into the void with us on Spaced Out Saturdays.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm making my way to San Francisco tomorrow morning, as I will be driving down to the Vancouver area. And so Elizabeth Anglin will be in hosting for me tomorrow night. Glenn Steckling will be her guest. as they will be talking about the moon landings and what's on the moon right now. Friday night, Joe Roop will be in for me as he will be talking with Thomas Seawood about Sasquatch Island here in British Columbia. I will be attending the 2018 UFO conference as a speaker down in San Francisco, California at the Holiday Inn Airport Hotel. So if you have the ability to head to San Francisco this weekend to catch this conference, I would love to meet up with you. And once again, if you can't make it, my speech is 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern on Sunday. I am going to put it on my Facebook, my personal Facebook page. If you want to tune on in and listen to my speech, that would be great. I would love to have you attend that and tell me what you think. I'll make sure the hair looks good. But that's what I'll be doing this weekend. I will be back on the air Monday night with Butch Witkowski's Strange Days. So it's going to be a quick turnaround for me, but you're still going to get quality programming the next 2 nights at spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on The Fringe FM. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to revolution.radio and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Uvolopalato Pharyngoplasty. Uvolopalato-pharyngoplasty. Let's say it one more time. Uvolopalato-pharyngoplasty is your password for tonight. Make sure you use it wisely, space travelers, as Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can watch us live on periscope.tv. You can also follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, follow me at Dave Scott SOR. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel for our archives. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. We would appreciate that. On our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. You could rock out to some Bumblefoot, do a little shopping in our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online, or watch great videos from UFO seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. Tonight, for the final time, I introduce Sasquatch and cryptid researcher Samantha Ellen Ritchie. She is based out of Tacoma, Washington, does a lot of her investigations around Mount Rainier, a very special place, and she has had numerous interactions with Sasquatch and little people. Right before the break, Samantha, welcome back, by the way, we were talking about footprints. Why do you think so many investigators are now starting to realize that usually you only get one print?
Well, I think there's an intention with that. I mean, obviously, if there's multiple, the norm would be with an animal, with anything, people, you walk in, you walk out. Okay, there's footprints leading to. That's what trackers based on. You know, being able to know when something's going in, something's coming out. And but when you actually see a singular footprint or two, nothing leading up to it, nothing going away from it, especially when there's fresh snow on the ground or it's mud, it's a muddy area where you know darn good and well that if something's there, especially if it's a heavy footprint, a big footprint, and it's completely surrounded by a very, very muddy, moist area where you would literally, logic would tell you that something else, other footprint would have to be there. Just the fact that it defies logic should wake people up to the fact that you're not dealing with something that's just simply of a physical nature. That I think people are kind of waking up to this, and you can't live in denial forever. And you have, there are old school Bigfoot researchers from the early days. They kind of did the same thing all the time. And the saying, don't expect to get different results if you don't do anything differently, you know. And the case has been always the, you know, thinking inside the box and everything, always expecting a physical creature, making assumptions about that. They never get anywhere with their research. But the new breed of researchers, or I would call them interactors, you know, people that are doing interactions, are the ones that are realizing that you're dealing with something that's beyond the norm, something that's definitely has special capabilities that go beyond the norms. You got to realize that you're opening the door to paranormal, to things that go beyond what we have personally experienced as humans, into a realm that is totally foreign to us. And that's what people are waking up to.
It just amazes me, with a creature that heavy, that it could only leave one track. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Now, I realize people will say, well, sometimes you hit a soft patch of ground if you're walking on hard ground, and that's all that's ever left is one print. Yes, it does happen. It's not out of the realm of impossibility. But when you get a creature that heavy, and you're, say, in the middle of the thicket of the forest where the ground is soft due to the softness of the dirt or the softness of the moss on the ground or whatever it could be, you would expect some sort of trail.
Oh, especially if the footprint's 18 inches long, or 20. I've seen as long as 24 inches. If you do a ratio of how big the body would have to be to leave a 24 inch footprint, that's massive. We're talking about some serious weight. There's no way you're going to tiptoe through a muddy field with that kind of weight and not leave impressions coming in and coming out. You're going to be pressing some things down. But it doesn't happen that way. You have the singular footprint, and then nothing. You know, so it does baffle people. I think sometimes people don't want to think about that. But when they do find it, they'll do the foot casting and everything. And you have to logically think about this, though, because there's something that defies logic. You have to kind of accept the fact that something else is going on here, you know?
So in your best estimation, what could be that something that is going on?
Their ability it goes right back to their ability. We know that they can appear and just disappear, okay? We know that they can just phase in and phase out, and this goes into this capability of it could very well be a quantum shift. Some of the things I've been researching having to do with the speed of can I get into this a little bit?
Please do. Absolutely.
Okay. One of the things I had done research on is we think of let's talk about the 3D world. I mean, we everything that's solid to us, like this cup of water I got here, or the table, or humans, or whatever we see solid things. But there is an agreed upon. That's because the underlying existence of atoms, of everything below atoms, at some basic level, everything's operating at the same frequency. There's kind of this baseline frequency that controls the 3D matter that you call our dimension, okay? And it's in sync with each other. In other words, I can't take my hand and pass it through a tree and push it through a tree. Why is that? Because the matter of the tree and the matter of my hand are based, the underlying energy that's underneath everything that exists as a physical matter is running at the same frequency, you know, on a quantum level, and it's in phase with it as well. So we're all kind of like, it's kind of like the computer analogy where the computer system is running, all the programs are running on the same basic speed, basically. So what happens is, when I think that they have the capability of changing that energy pattern, what happens then is they could speed up that underlying quantum signature, so that it's kind of like a movie clip. You know, if you ever see these old movies where, you know, when it's showing the film and it's a frame by frame at a time, those frames are in sync. Well, that would be like our existence. What they're able to do is they're able to kind of like go in between the frames. They're able to speed up or slow down out of sync their energy so that it's either speeded up on a quantum level, so that now they're kind of phasing, they're actually going out of phase with our reality. And what happens is they can actually go through things at that point because there's no collision. You know, if something has the same energy pattern, it's going to, if you hit it like your hands together, it's going to stop because you're colliding the same energy pattern together. But once it shifts off, it has a tendency to kind of go through it, you know, because it's not going to collide. And the more they get off, phase off, that energy pattern starts to phase off at either a faster rate, the more transparent they become. In other words, it is possible for you to have a quantum signature, I think, that's just off a little bit, and you're partially in this, what you call dimension, but then you can be perceived as being blurry, you know, because of the fact that now your energy pattern is kind of like, you're not exactly solid anymore because part of you is here at part of the time, part of you aren't, you know. I mean, I'm trying to explain this in a very layman's terms, you know, because underlying this is I think the difference of numerous dimensions, numerous realities have everything to do with energy signatures. And the thing that we all have to have a commonality of the same energy signature, that basically, you know, our reality is based on one energy signature. The Sasquatch can actually change theirs into a different energy signature and that kind of veer off from our existence. So they could do it at will. Maybe they do it through consciousness. So, I mean, that's kind of the far-out explanation on the quantum side. The other thing, too, the other thing that has to do with this quantum shifting that I'm starting to observe, a lot of things I've seen is I've observed lights changing. Like I start seeing in some of those black areas, I actually noticed the cryptids will actually start to look black, just like that really blackness between the tree was actually more of an ultraviolet color. Well, what nature, I mean, things in nature actually put out ultraviolet color. But what happens if something is nothing but an ultraviolet color? What would that look like to you? Let's say there was an object that was right between a tree, and the only color that it was emanating was ultraviolet. What would that look like to a human?
I think that's perfectly.
I'm just throwing.
I think that's a perfectly legit question. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we found out that sharks only see in green. And that's why they have troubles deciphering between seals and people on surfboards.
Right. And absolutely. Now, our sensors, like our eyes, have the cones that detect three different ranges of colors within the visible spectrum. Our cones do allow some sight into the ultraviolet or infrared area, but because of the lens of our eyes actually blocks out most of the UV, the ultraviolet. So if it totally blocks out all ultraviolet light from us getting into our receptors, photoreceptors, that means that when we're looking between those two trees and there's an ultraviolet object in the middle, it would appear jet black to us without definition because we can't see it. There's nothing there. There's ultraviolet light that's emanating from it or being reflected back to our eyes, But if our eyes can't see anything, we're blind to it. It's black. And that's why you hear this expression, the Sasquatch live in the shadows. Because I think with this shifting, they can actually shift their, let's say if they are a brown color or they're blondish color, when they shift their quantum frequency up, it also has to have the effect of shifting the color spectrum up that they're representative of. So as the higher they go, the higher up the color is just a reflection of the frequency that they're emanating. So I think when they're shifting upwards, that's where they start. I've seen pictures on some of these creatures, some of the entities I had. It looks like they're shifting, they're doing this transition thing. And they start out and they do like a blue color, then they start going into a really deep purple color, and then into a violet color, and then finally start becoming transparent until finally they disappear. I actually have a picture of one entity, or it could be a little person, that I show them partially, they're blue, but they're transparent, and then they disappear in the next second later. And I have a comparison photo of that. So I actually have a number of pictures of, I call them going blue on me, you know. So I think that's a large part of it. They're actually, when they go up frequency, on the quantum side, they're also changing their color frequency too. You know, and the opposite could be true too. If they could lower it down into the infrared area, that's the heat zone. That's the heat area, or they can generate that heat as well. So they got, if you can change your quantum state like that, up or down, you could change a lot of things. You could probably even change your perception of time, where you're able to speed up time at will. In other words, we as humans are stuck on, if you think of the old phonographs, you know, at 45 RPM or 33 1/3, if you're old enough to remember all that, or 78 RPM.
Yes,
we're
I am.
Stuck on 40. We're stuck on 45 as humans. But let's say a creature can go 45 and then all of a sudden switch over to 78 or faster. Think of the insects, how still they can be 1 second, and all of a sudden, like a hummingbird, and look how fast they can beat their wings. It's like all of a sudden you can have a creature that's just still for a little bit, and all of a sudden, poof, just like that. It's almost like they're able to change not only their perception of time, but also their ability to change time itself with regards to their body, how their body moves. Kind of like the Flash, you know. You think about
Absolutely.
these superheroes.
Yes,
that's the first thing that comes to my mind. You know,
I have one.
I think
more...
that's what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Go finish up, please. Finish up, please.
No, that was pretty much it on that. I mean,
all right. All right. Hey, I just want to get to one final question on Bigfoot here. This one comes from John. He is asking, be honest, Samantha, did it scare the crap out of you the first time you had a face-to-face encounter with Bigfoot? Didn't it absolutely terrify you to the core?
No. Not at all. Nope.
How come?
Because I'm empathic. I've always been empathic, and I could feel when something's threatening to me or not. I understand my own feelings. In other words, I can feel with people. I do readings on people. If I sit in front of them, I can read people's intentions. I can actually read it through facial expressions. I could feel it emanating from people. And so the Bigfoots that they're nearby, I could feel their presence. I could feel how they feel. And I'm no threat to them, and they feel pretty good about me. That's why I didn't feel too good about the last presidential person who was running it. I could see through things. I could feel through things that weren't very good.
You know what? You and I have the same ability, because I could see through Hillary too.
Well, yeah.
I'm just teasing there. Let's get to the little people here, because I think for a lot of people, we don't really understand the history that goes on with the little people of the mountains or the forests. I know the first time that I ever heard of them was here in British Columbia. One of my by one of my First Nations friends whose uncle he was out hunting the mountains and looking for deer trails before the season started, and he actually came across a little village near Cultus Lake, British Columbia, which is, very close to the Washington state border. And apparently the little people are known as tricksters. They're not very happy people. They don't like to be bugged. And if they find out who you are, they will follow you and exact some revenge. Have you noticed that?
I hope that's not correct. Or at least I haven't found that out yet. No. If it wasn't, I don't think it's ever been a case where I went looking for them and they were unhappy with it. My contact with Bigfoot was the start. I think I was drawn to them, and I think they drew me to them. And I think they kind of, after time, handed me off or introduced me somehow. The little people came into the picture. And I think it was intentional on their part to bring me into the picture. So I never had an ill will feeling about that from them. And now the trickster part, I don't know, but I do know they exist. I started seeing them in my pictures. I didn't think much of it for about a year. I said, no, it can't be. Because I saw a group of them at one point back in 2015 in December, and they looked like a little group of hippies. And it was just so bizarre because there's just no way that amount of detail can be seen in such a small area of the photo. And I know it was in a very big spot. It was like behind the bushes, out in the forest in a place I call the Fortress. Well, later on in the place I go to closest to me called the Field of Dreams, where we had all the portal activity, and then we had the big guy, I'll tell you, between the tree that was showing up, and then of course about a year later, I had the morphing Bigfoot. It seems to be the big thing right now. I had that video go viral in the last couple of weeks, and it looked like it was shape-shifting, but then I had these alien beings show up. Now, they were full-size, like 6 foot, or the alien-type person was about 6 foot tall. Now, the little people, what was so odd about that was right about that same time and the same day that these other entities showed up that were more full-size, like 6 foot, was I'm looking down at I'm going back to my older pictures, and I'm saying, I need to go back and look. I wasn't looking for something really small. I'm going back, and I'm finding the entities, finding things that look like, very detailed little people. Didn't think much of that. I collected a few of those. And then what happened was December 19th, I was out in the woods, and I took a picture. And I don't know the circumstance of whatever it was, but just this past year. And I'm looking at this picture, and I'll say, oh, my God, there's a young Sasquatch watching me. And these are on the slide things they can see for themselves if they want to go to it. And I'm looking at this and says, oh, my God, that's amazing. That's quite a bit of detail on the facial area and everything. And then I look down below there next to this log, and there's a little white-haired man that's laying his head on the log, only a few inches high. And I start to zoom in on it, and it says, I'm aghast by the amount of detail to this. The wave of the hair, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the chin, everything is there. It's just unbelievable. It's not and I did a comparison picture where it wasn't there, a lighter picture in the same spot, that it was a little person. And it wasn't leaves. It wasn't pareidolia that people call it. This was the amount of detail to the facial area. There's no way that could have been simulated. And then I went back in December. We had some snowfall in the same little area, And then I take a picture, and I'm looking down, and I'm zooming in this one spot, and there's it looks like a little warrior. I mean, it looks like someone's wearing like a fur or something like that. And it's very detailed face and everything, and it has an expression. You can see its lips and mouth and nose, and then there's a little square white device next to its face. Totally unnatural. And this is a little person, another one. And he's standing there looking kind of sneeringly in my direction. But obviously access to technology, because of the devices I'm seeing in several examples. That's one of them. And then, and sometime before that, I had another one that was in a wood pile, and I zoom in on it, and lo and behold, there's this face. It's a very similar type of face as the first one with the old man, and very thin chin and everything. The nose, very human, extremely human-like. But what was so odd about this one was you look and there's this black frame around the eyes. Well, it's not pixelation. This little person is wearing specs, black frame glasses. I am just blown away by this stuff. I have them on my pictures here.
You're scaring the heck out of me because I have an absolute fear of gnomes. Absolute fear of gnomes.
Well, they're showing up all over the place. And, and they're increasing their visibility toward me to the point where when I go out there, well, here's the deal. I mean, let me just expound on this a little bit. I go out there and play the flute. I have a Lakota flute that someone gave me. And I play it, and I learned to play it really well. And I'll go out there and I'll sit and play it. But I know they like it, and they'll come out for it. And so I talk to them. I say, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal. I'll come out here and play the flute for you for a period of time, and all you guys got to come out and do. And, if you want to communicate with me, I can't see you because you're too small. It says, I'm just going to take pictures of the surrounding area, the background around near me. And then, if you guys want to wave or smile or whatever, that's fine. And then I'll take the pictures, and I'll go back and take a look at them later on. I'll enlarge the photos, and lo and behold, I'll see them in there sometimes. I'll see a few of them waving. Unbelievable. And someone so human looking, it just blows your mind. One time, I wanted them to communicate with me, and I know they understand English. I didn't include this picture on here, but I took a picture, and I'm looking up in the tree, and the most unnatural thing that you could ever possibly see, I saw the letter P, a serif font, uppercase P, that was formed in the tree, a letter. And then I took a few pictures after that and dissipated. It was just formed for long enough for me to take the picture, and then it kind of disassembled itself. They had the letter P up there. What the P stands for, I don't know. I think it's people. I often talk about Pleiadians or the Pleiadian energy. That's a whole different subject that I'm familiar with. But there is an ongoing communication thing going on here. And the other thing too that might be a connection with this is I was involved in trying to, and I have it out in that area within my cabin, as I was trying to develop some kind of motor, energy motor or whatever. But it's basically involves spinning neodymium magnets that are spinning at a fairly good rate with these special star coils that I created. So I'm running this device of mine, and it seems, because it's radiating out, it's not enclosed in a metal enclosure or anything like that. And the one time when I ran it for a little bit, and something felt strange that told me I needed to go out and take a picture. And I took a picture in one direction of my property. It's right at my property. And then there's this picture of a blue face. It looks like looks like the Smurf appears out of nowhere. And then a few seconds later, I took a series of pictures. And he's gone the next few seconds later. So I have these two pictures side by side showing the face appears and then it disappears. Something was attracting them, that the spinning electromagnetic energy was somehow kind of like sending up a beacon or attracting them there for momentarily. So I don't know if, I'm delving into something that's kind of dealing with portals and activation of portals or something that involves electromagnetic frequency pulses or something. I know there's a connection. So, in that area is very highly, especially the area where the portal was, is I think the reason there's a high probability of them being there is because that one spot is almost like an interdimensional doorway where they come and go as they please, in that area. So this would include the Sasquatch, the Bigfoots, the little people, other kinds of entities that come and go. Some of them end up projecting themselves off the trees. I've had faces that are projected off the trees and disappear. I've had even in the creek area, I had some entity was sitting there, looked like a little leprechaun hat on. I mean, it runs the gambit of different kinds of things showing up. Fairies, you name it. It's all kind of happening there.
Samantha, I'm getting a lot of people asking where they can view these pictures.
I have a link. If you go to, all you have to do is go to planetsasquatch.com. Okay? If you go to that, and it'll come up with at the top of the menu, it'll say show or show slides. Let me make sure that's the case. Hang on, let me...
Show slides, yes.
There you go. You got it. And I got them all there. Just go down, peruse through those. You'll see examples of everything. The big guy, the Bigfoot, the dark area where I was talking about compared to what was actually there. You have the embedded video of the morphing Sasquatch. And I get into the little people thing down the bottom. Everything's there.
Amazing. Just amazing.
Footprint I was talking about, the singular footprint, and then the little people down near the end. Yep.
These little people.
Even the little white-haired guy. Yep.
I'm trying to look for the white-haired guy. I'm seeing...
yeah, go down to slide 17. Just go all the way down.
Oh, there he is. My goodness.
Look at that. What do you think of that?
That is very strange. The close-up.
And right above him, if you go the slide above him, that's what was in the same picture above him. Just further back in was that in the yellow circle, in the yellow square that I had the young Sasquatch was looking on.
Right. Wow.
And then you go down past that, and then there's it looks like a wood pile of branches. Then you have the other little person, and a close-up of him, you'll notice there's a little square thing around his eyes, and you just vaguely see it in his little narrow face, and he's got glasses on too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's a few others,
You have to have a good eye for this stuff.
To initially see them, yes. Also, we have an expectation sometimes what we're looking for, and sometimes outlines are necessary for people to get used to seeing these pictures because they're not real. First of all, you're dealing with something that's either a long way, unless I had a 50 megapixel camera, which I'm doing good with a 24 megapixel. But something that's very miniature, you're going to lose resolution on, So you're going to have a little sense of blur there, but you're going to, be able to see. You could still see the the entity, despite a little bit of that.
How big are these little people that you're seeing?
A few inches tall. A few inches tall. And some are even smaller. I think, how everything's a fractal. I think there's things that are even smaller than the little people that make them look like giants. One of the last pictures that got near the bottom where I actually did a little yellow outline, it looks like a little gnome or something. This is a micro person. We found, me and a friend who's kind of psychic as well. She felt a lot of energy coming from this wood stump, and when I took my camera and took a picture of it and zoomed in this one incredible small area and found this micro person that on the picture, and you can actually tell if you look at the yellow outline on it. It's way down near the end, like slide 28, whatever. It's
It's definitely different. That's for sure. It's definitely different. Are they completely humanoid? Like, how close have you been to these where you've seen them personally with your own eye to see the body?
I haven't been able to do that myself. The problem is too, when you're taking their picture, is I'm running into the time problem. Like I could take my camera, and usually the camera will take a picture at 1/60th of a second. And you got to think of it in terms of, like, I have that spinning wheel I was referring to, and it'll spin, and I can't see the end of it. It has 9 magnets on it, and it's spinning so fast I can't see the magnets, but I'll take a picture, and all of a sudden it looks like it's still, the picture is still. I can see the individual magnets. The same thing I think is happening here is that you're dealing with, whether it's the quantum thing or the time frequency, where if they're moving or vibrating, that I'm able to capture them at 1/60th of the second. I'm not going to be able to see that with my own eyes if they're moving or vibrating. See what I'm saying? Kind of like I'm capturing a moment in time that I'm absolutely able to see them, but I wouldn't be able to do it in real human terms. So, I know what I'm seeing when I'm looking at the pictures. I've studied pictures, just hundreds of pictures of looking at and we'll go through a lot of scenery pictures and things like that, and I know nothing's there. I know nothing is there, but because I'm able to normalize what I'm seeing, that, okay, I know that scenery. I've developed a skill where when something stands out, it's different. I spot it immediately on the photo. It's usually a dark spot or an ultraviolet spot or something, or something just definitely just stands out like unbelievable that I could spot right to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you believe that
like the little white man?
Do you believe that these little people are somehow related to Bigfoot?
There was another theory that I was postulating on with some people about the fact that it had to do with time and space and about their ability to change their dimensional state, their 3D state. And I'm thinking the Bigfoots, if they are shapeshifters, or they're able to shapeshift their density, for instance, if they are of a certain density and all of a sudden they decide to condense that density, they could shrink down to a very small size. And I've seen smaller pictures, and I don't have them here, but I've seen what looks like miniature Bigfoots running around in there, and about the size of little people. So you don't always just see this humanoid little people out there. You actually see what looks like Bigfoots. So it might answer some questions. Where do they live? Well, if they're living underground, I have a suspicion that the little people live underground, or they live in the stumps or something, or they can actually go through a material. They can actually pass through material things and get to like an opening or wherever they live. Maybe they got underground cities. Who knows? I don't know. But I have a feeling that where do the Bigfoots go? Well, maybe they shrink down. Maybe they go in the trees. Whenever we see them, we just have a perception of what they're bigger. Maybe it's just a projection that they're just that big. And but their size doesn't matter to them. It just opens the door to the more I learn, the more I don't know, but the more I can postulate about with the pop. I'm trying to look at the newer science that is coming out. When it comes to quantum physics or the things that I am very familiar with, which is frequencies, light, radio waves. I'm an amateur radio operator for many years, so I have a real deep knowledge of electronics and radio frequency waves and light waves and things like that. So definitely in connection with all that too.
Is there a pattern, though, with the way these creatures move comparatively to other cryptids? Are they just as, looking at these photos with the average eye, as you said, you couldn't see them. So obviously they have this same hide-and-go-seek thing going on that Bigfoot does.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think it's intentional. It's the one thing that if you can't see any of the pictures really well, then the one that really gets people is the little white-haired man that is almost unmistakable. When you look at that one, it's like you can't make that stuff up. But when it comes to it has to do with their ability to move very quickly. A lot of times, I'll see something like run through the weeds. And it's moving at an incredible speed, but it's not a bug or anything. It's just like, what's moving through the weeds that quickly? And it could be them, but they're going to move. It's going to be a blur to us. If something is moving at an incredible speed of time and are kind of just moving back and forth or just vibrating themselves, you know what that's going to look like too? It's going to look like fan blades, with a fan turning. You can see right through it, but the fans, it's solid, but it's moving at an incredible fast rate. With the fan, it's rotating. With them, they can vibrate back and forth or have a certain amount of vibration going on with their bodies where at a certain speed where everything looks like a blur. I think it's kind of funny. It says if Bigfoot, a joke about, if Bigfoot were to walk up to you and do a selfie with you, you would be clear, but the Bigfoot would still be a blur even though it's right next to you. And there might be some truth to that. Is because that they're not in tune, they're not in phase with our reality to ever be taken, to ever get a picture of them that clearly, or even the little people. Unless you had some way. The only thing that helps with these pictures is you have enhancement tools to help brighten, lighten, and add contrast to the photo, so that a lot of times it get too dark. You can't see what's there, and you'd be amazed by adding some brightness and contrasting what you're able to, or use fade correction that'll actually bring the picture up to a point where, man, you could actually see a little bit of detail. But even then, it takes your eyes a little bit. It's not the kind of thing where the average person will look at without getting their eyes strained.
Have you talked to a lot of First Nations people regarding these little people and their connection to the cryptid world? Maybe fairies, maybe Bigfoot, whatever it may be.
I have not, and I know they have. I know the First Nations people have their stories, and about some of the ones that I've kind of had some familiarity with just from reading about was they don't feel that we should be making these kind of contacts with them and things like that they need to be left alone, and I just can't totally agree with that. I know they have their opinion and everything. I didn't ask to even be part of this in the beginning. And it's just like this stuff is just kind of like, it's just flowing, in my direction. So I'm a curious person. I'd like to learn more, and if something keeps presenting itself to me, I'm just not going to certainly I don't have any fear toward it. So I'm not going to like walk away from it because I'm fearful of it. I'm not fearful of this at all. I don't think I'm going to expect ill will from the little people or anything because I'm going down a certain path and trying to understand them or try to get to a point where I can communicate with them better. Or the Bigfoots for that matter. You know.
We got a little thing that we do called the Thought of the Day. If we're going to get into that right now.
Okay.
Thought of the Day happens every night at this time where during the day I put a question on my Facebook and people on Facebook, and it transfers over to Twitter. People on Twitter answer the question. So today's question for the Thought of the Day is this, and we're going to get Samantha's opinion on this as well. What do you think Bigfoot's main source of food is, Samantha?
Oh, I saw that question earlier. Didn't think it would be posed to me. Do they eat? Yes, I think they eat. Do I think they eat meat? I don't think they're. If they do, I know that they eat salmon. I know they eat peanut butter. So I know they need protein, but I think they're more what do you call it when they eat plants more than they do?
Herbivores?
Herbivores, yeah, more so than they are meat eaters. Yep.
I think they kind of follow the bear tracks, where they'll go after meat if it's there, but they mainly like to free range on leaves and berries and roots. You know what I'm saying? More so. I don't profess to be an expert in that particular area, though. Well, let's listen to some of the comments that our listeners bring forward, and I think this is kind of funny. Mr. America Vince says, freedom. They eat freedom. I don't know really what that means, but some of these are going to be humorous, some not. It's just the way we do things. Matthew says, probably similar to a bear's diet, berries and roots in the summer and meat in the fall, winter and spring could be from storage supplies. Well, that also brings up the question, do you believe this creature moves with the warmer temperatures as we go into winter, or do you believe it may hibernate?
That's a good question. That's a fair question. I will tell you, at least like down in Ocean Shores area, which is on the ocean side of Washington State, there is a migration of the Bigfoots that actually they go there in the winter. They'll end up at the beach because we found long tunnels in the bushes and everything like that where they, there's a lot of clams, there's a lot of protein comes from stuff off the ocean. They'll go there because there's very little people there and to interact with, and that's one of the reasons they'll go there. As summertime approaches, they migrate back to the mountains, so they'll actually be up there. And I think, in addition to what I was saying earlier, I think they have their knowledge base of what's available out there to eat is probably far surpasses anything we would ever know as humans. There is so much that's available that if we had that knowledge, we could probably survive out even the Cascade Mountains because we would be familiar with every single root or herb or plant that either has a medicinal use or nutritional value that won't kill us or poison us. And I think the Bigfoots are fully aware of this kind of knowledge,
Let's move on here. My reporter friend out of Vancouver, John, says, lost hikers feeding off of people. Everett comes in and says it's obviously beef jerky. Well, of course, due to Jack Links.
Well, you know what? I had one time I did a gifting thing. I had one of those Jack Links vinegar sausages or whatever and put it out there. And it disappeared the next day. and then I couldn't find the package or anything. I mean, it was gone, and I couldn't find it anywhere near the gifting site. I come back a day or two later, and lo and behold, here's the package that was in, and it was left back, and it was put back on the gifting site. It's like the message that came to me was like, "Man, this stuff was good. Can you bring another one?" And so I went and got another one, and it disappeared the next day too. So
that doesn't
they do
surprise
like
me.
that.
Does not surprise me.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, I thought I'd throw that one out. You know,
my internet guru, Catherine, she actually talked to Jack Lynx about how we talk Bigfoot all the time on this, and Jack Lynx actually sent us a care package. I even got some nice socks out of it. It was fantastic. Good people there, Jack Lynx. Absolutely good people there, Jack Lynx. But let's move on here. Barry says, humans, of course. You don't really believe in alien abductions, do you? And I think there is some symbolism to that, because if you listen to, David Paulides, he believes strongly that some of these kidnappings in the forest are from Bigfoot.
well, I think there's other. I'm more suspicious of reptilian entities than I am Bigfoot's doing it. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, Joe hops in and says gummy bears. How can you turn down gummy bears? Chris says,
I like gummy bears.
Me too. We might have to fight them for it. Absolutely. Chris says wildlife. Jeff, Slim Jims. Tina, Big Macs. Donna, like a bear. Eric says gnomes. Thanks, Eric with a K. That just cost you a drink this weekend in San Francisco. Lee says the Easter Bunny and Tide Pods. No, we're not talking about Bigfoot millennials here, Lee. We're just not going there. All right. Gary says, my belief is an omnivore. However, protein would be high on the list. I think that one suits well. Don't you think, Samantha?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, anything protein is definitely high on the list.
Bill Cardwell, who sets the password here every night, says kokanee beer, because it's the beer out here. And every kokanee beer, if you've never tried it, it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. Good Canadian beer. BC beer, actually. Mm-hmm. And they have a picture of a Sasquatch on every can that you have to find. Berries and fish, that's what John said, following up on what you said. And Elizabeth says, roots, rhizomes, meat, fish, berries, bark, plants. Yes, indeed, we get there. David says they suck the blood out of cows and remove selected internal organs for snacks later. And they like playing in fields of grain, chewing off the tops for nourishment while weaving designs for the stalks on the ground. That sorts out everything, right? Well, you forgot the aliens. You forgot the aliens.
Yeah, the aliens. Yeah, give them A for that. That was quite a description, though. That was pretty good.
I do agree. We'll get to a couple more here. Edie, and you know Edie from this show. She's been a guest a couple times. Deer, animal crackers, peanut butter, and shelf-stable non-GMO milk. She has a gifting site that she has very good luck at. Very good luck at.
Yeah.
You know, and Gail will end the night. I think they have a replicator from their home dimension and eat their home food, which probably is nothing like Earth food. That's very zen, Gail. Very zen. Samantha, could you please give your website out once again so our audience could check it out?
Okay, we got more of a blog site, planetsasquatch.com. We're also on YouTube as Planet Sasquatch YouTube channel, and we have a Facebook group, Planet Sasquatch. And just check out any of those three things. And I think I'm missing anything. I don't think so.
Wonderful.
But all roads lead back to me. Just think Planet Sasquatch, and it'll always come back to me.
Well, my friend Samantha Ellen Ritchie, much pleasure talking to you on this show again. Let's do it later on this year again.
Sounds good.
All right, you hold on. I'm going to wrap this thing up. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Thank you, Mr. B. Get your horns up for him every single night. Tomorrow night on the program, Elizabeth Anglin is in the captain's chair. Glenn Steckling is her guest, talking moon landings, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time. Then on Friday, Joe Roop is in for me with Thomas Seawood, talking Sasquatch Island. I am off to San Francisco for UFOCon 2018. Thank you so much. I hope to see you in San Fran. If not, we are going to broadcast it on my Facebook page, 3:30 Pacific time on Sunday, 6:30 Eastern time. I hope you can check it out. I want to say a big thank you to everybody listening at work, in your homes, in your cars, everybody on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio, on Periscope. Thank you so much. Everybody in Spreaker and in the Veterans Club, you know who you are. Thanks for a great week. I'm going to enjoy the weekend starting right now. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. See you Monday, everyone. Good night.